Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment class. We are excited to be here with Jean Ang as we connect with the InterGalactics again. And this is all about how we take the high frequency light that we are receiving and we embody it and express it in our world. Let's welcome Jean Ang back to this platform. Hi, Jean, welcome.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone. And really excited to share in this discussion. I've just recently connected with the InterGalactics for the next actual level of the InterGalactics, which will be level 5. And a big part of those, basically there's 2 sets of 6 frequencies, is exactly what you mentioned. They're called the Intergalactic Embodiment frequencies. And really looking forward to discussing the InterGalactics as a background, our work as light workers, spiritual workers, and this idea of how do we embody sort of the high energies that we're bringing through, both for ourselves, our loved ones, the environment, our clients, and the kind of world at large.
Yes, what could go sideways with embodying these frequencies? Where does it get a challenge to embody? What can happen if we don't embody them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, I've in the different modalities that I studied since kind of starting on the journey, as many people have studied many different modalities. That's kind of, I think, our renaissance currently on the planet in spirituality. This question has been great. I think I've learned a lot of things from different schools, different teachers, and facilitators. And so I'll just couch the issue, and I think people probably will identify that. I'll just use maybe 1 or 2 metaphors. One metaphor is sort of like the jet engine. We have certain energetic fuel that we might put into a machine or an engine, like a jet engine, or even a car. And the fuel is similar to these high frequency light and information and energies that we're connecting to. And I think there's this period now, probably starting from 2012, where many people, probably everyone here that's listening, and are bringing in more high frequency energies, which is great. Certain dimensions, certain spiritual realities, forces, beings, inner world teachers are now much more available, both because of maybe the cycle we're in, as well as what's needed on the planet. So it's sort of like we upgraded from there's three types of gasoline you can get. You can get the regular, kind of the mid grade, and then the premium. And then we're sort of even higher than premium in terms of the type of fuel we can access, would be type of frequency. The issue, though, with the embodiment question is, do we have you can put fuel in any kind of engine and it will, for most part, work. But if you go really high fuel, like certain fuels, they don't work in certain engines anymore. They kind of will break the engine down. So the engine itself has to increase, change its structure. And so that metaphorically is really the issue, is that if we start to use really high frequency energies, the best possible scenario is that we could use part of it in our kind of more former energy system. and then the rest just doesn't go anywhere. It sort of almost like floats out into the subtle world. But sometimes what people are finding, and it can be expressed as physical symptoms, is this high frequency energy when it hits our system, and it doesn't, and we're not quite used to that high level of energy, then it can cause sort of friction, which could occur in any of the subtle bodies. And so, just like as a physical, people might get physical certain symptoms or reactions when that happens, and maybe people can identify with that. But that's sort of, I would say, the either the issue or the problem, or what these frequencies are here to help.
Yes, and it's interesting that it's the intergalactics who are assisting with this. Tell us about your connection with the intergalactics and what they're doing to assist in this process.
Yeah. The background here is kind of very appropriate. I met the intergalactics sort of energetically, spiritually in the inner world, and as well as the physical world at Mount Shasta, which many people know is a very strong portal into the subtle realms. If you ever get a chance to go there, or even just go there by astrally, or connecting like through a picture and so forth, like the background. But since 2017, the intergalactic showed up both physically in terms of lights or energies in the sky, and also as well as spiritually in terms of a journey. And since then, they've kind of imparted, or I perceive, like energetic packets for a healing modality. So it did start out with sort of a set of frequencies, which was called the level one. And then now this coming trip, which I'll have in August, which will probably have also a fall when we do our August Mastery Empowerment class. It'll be interesting to see how these next three unfold. But is when the level five will be kind of the first class. So we're sort of actually downloading the frequencies before that with this first set of embodiment frequencies. And just to kind of end this sort of introduction, I know we're going to try to also introduce or share with people maybe previous intergalactic mastery empowerment classes as part of this package, which will be great. Kind of like bring in that energetic information that's been established so far. But their main thrust, both like similar to the Arcturians in terms of wanting to help the planet and beings, in my perception, is that they work very strongly to help build the subtle bodies, first of the practitioner, actually. And so that really falls in line with these set of embodiment frequencies, as I think a lot of practitioners are the ones who experience this first, because they're always, under the heavy exposure or even strain of bringing in a lot of high frequency light, whether it's to groups or to their clients or just in their meditation spiritual work. So that's been a strong focus of the intergalactics, is to help build the subtle body system of both the practitioner as well as clients.
And can you review the subtle body system for those who may not be familiar with it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the subtle bodies, so we have our physical body, which is very apparent, very, first kind of workable to people. And then when people sort of enter kind of maybe the spiritual path, they become aware of other aspects of themselves, which are perhaps in the beginning more subtle, but actually they're more lasting. And then as we have more experiences, we kind of recognize these different aspects of ourselves. And that's usually termed like a multidimensional model, helps to explain those experiences. So the other possible experiences or bodies, going from more dense to more rarefied or subtle. The next would be the etheric or pranic body, like our chi, or where the acupuncture meridians are. The next is the emotional body, sort of where our emotions lie or are sourced from. Then the mental body, and then together the emotional mental body sometimes is referred to as the astral body, which people might have heard that term or used that term for those two kind of experiences. And then the causal body is next, which is more our karmic, our kind of cause and effect information field. So anytime we've had an intention, we kind of almost like dropping a pebble into a pond, it starts a ripple. So that would be like the pebble is the cause, the ripple is the effect. So we kind of, have that information field in the causal body. And then the spiritual bodies, like our Akashic records or our spiritual information field. And finally, the divine is where we're unified with the all or God source, kind of our deepest state of consciousness, which is non-dual.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the intergalactics are working to help us build those energetic bodies. And these embodiment frequencies, there are 6 of them. Can you go over those frequencies?
Yeah, and they're kind of separated as in our format is the 2 hour sessions, every for 3 days. So there's 3 sessions. So I'll kind of go over the frequencies, kind of what they're called, what they do, and then how they're separated into those 3 sessions. And then a kind of another deeper model that we'll use also in the sessions that's kind of good is actually from Rudolf Steiner about how the spiritual world, particularly the astral dimension, the emotional mental dimension, densifies into the etheric before it manifests into the physical. So you can use that 7 dimensional model I just mentioned also as a model to say how do things manifest in the physical world, and particularly and they kind of are stepping down through those dimensions. And usually the question we usually focus on is how does it go from the astral world, sort of the mental, emotional world, through the etheric and finally into the physical. But so there's 6 frequencies. They're actually based on that model. So so they're called intergalactic embodiment, and then there's a divine frequency, a spiritual frequency, a causal frequency. And then the emotional mental dimension is combined into an astral frequency. And then there's the etheric embodiments frequency, and finally the physical embodiment frequency. And the idea here is like if you were to, some people have studied with non-dual traditions and have learned exercises or practices to connect to their kind of divine self or their non-dual self. So that's probably the highest frequency, the highest octane fuel. And so a lot of people can have those experiences, but then the question that we kind of, in a more specific way that we started in the beginning and set the tone with, or set the framework with, is how would you embody those non-dual experiences? Like you can go into this cosmic bliss, but then how do you go and like drive your car, or like on a very practical level, or like do your taxes, like and kind of integrate that experience? That would be kind of the 2 ends of that. And so, like for example, using the intergalactic embodiment frequency on the divine level, it would start to step down that high level experience into, let's say, at least the next dimension, which is the spiritual, as well as going down through all the remaining 5 or so dimensions, so that we can. You probably wouldn't change, just to kind of say how that might look. You wouldn't necessarily change probably your action. Like you'd probably still do your taxes, which is actually a good thing. Just to kind of, sometimes people can have such strong spiritual experiences that they can't do things that are practical anymore, or they feel like it's very difficult to do that. And just the ability to have a cosmic experience and then just come back and be like a normal person, like, and do those kind of very almost mundane things, that's actually the proper embodiment process. And so that frequency would help people not feel like those 2 experiences are so far apart. So you can have a cosmic experience, and then if it's properly embodied, then you can really also do very normal, mundane things without feeling kind of out of sorts. Maybe I'll pause there. I know we haven't quite finished the breakdown of those frequencies, but.
Well, it's very interesting because can you imagine a world where people are having these cosmic experiences and then living and doing taxes? It's almost like we could change the system just by our reaction or our response now, because the word taxes, I'm sure I'm not the only one that just gets triggered by that. They always say there's 2 things that are for certain: death and taxes. So
Right.
we can't get rid of our taxes, but if we're actually embodying something, then we're more at peace with the world.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I think that's what's needed, because then it's not such a dichotomy. I was remembering, this story, I think I read it, of how Doreen Virtue, when she was really channeling a lot of the angelic beings, kind of made an agreement with the angels that because she had to raise her frequencies so high to bring those frequencies down from the angels, she sort of said that I think her son would take care of like driving her around on the highway, like doing these kind of very practical things because the dimensions were so separate. And people might have, I just kind of bring that up because maybe people can identify that when, if they've done such high frequency work, like maybe went to Mount Shasta for a retreat for 7 days or so, and then they try to go back to their regular world, like there's this first maybe almost even up to a month where you're just like, what's happening, like I can't get back into my schedule. And that's where these six embodiment frequencies can help. Like they can help bring you back, maybe even so that you could start the next day and still have that powerful energy integrated into your system from, let's say, experience with the angels or Mount Shasta, and then still like start your, maybe it's not a day, but or however you need to start your regular life again.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So we're receiving help to hold this light and to integrate it more easily. We've shared in these courses that we've had with you that sometimes when we, even in the course, when we elevate in that way, coming back into what we call our normal 3D world, we can get a little cranky around the edges. So this is actually going to balance all of it out. Actually, I like to, I think I want to use the word fortify. It's fortifying us so that we can hold the light. We're stronger to hold the light, and we're not going to be cranky. We're going to be able to be strong as we walk in this world and in our relationships and experiences with the collective.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And my sense of what's also coming through is that with these frequencies, and it's just maybe a reflection of other practices, which maybe we will talk about, or I like would love to talk about, and we have great discussions during the series, is other practices that reflect this process, whether it's even eating a meal to more anchor ourselves to certain practices people do on their own, like I mentioned, other modalities had shared with me. But this series of intergalactic embodiment frequencies will help to bring those out for people, both as frequencies to do that, as well as practices they've done. But when you have that in your system, which is what I think the 3 days and the recordings will create, is like a system that both your subtle bodies will remember or almost be packaged with, as well as you could always use the recordings again to kind of like, let's say you do go on a retreat a year from now, or go to Peru, or go to Glastonbury, and then you're like, okay, I need to embody this, and you could re-listen to those 3 frequency sets to kind of bring yourself kind of integrate faster, more efficiently. But what that does is when you have that, either that tool or that process already encoded in your system, you can reach higher, meaning that the angelic or spiritual beings can bring you even higher octane frequencies because they know it won't disrupt your, let's say, life or your system, or they know that you can integrate that fairly efficiently.
When you experience reaching higher, for those who are not familiar with that, what is that like for you? Can you explain like reaching higher in those frequencies? What's it like?
Yeah. Well, one of the kind of more practical ways is I know, like when I have sessions, like now, like I'll have a private session on Zoom or even in person, and like I'm just kind of holding those frequencies, kind of just intentionally allowing, let's say, the Arcturians or InterGalactics to come through into the person's system. During it, it's a little bit like meditating, Before, when I was doing the trainings, it was quite difficult to hold a transmission, like even the ones that we do during the session. Like it would feel like I was jacked in, like I had just jacked myself into an electrical outlet. I don't feel that way now, maybe because of, let's say, the years of doing it, like we get used to our exercises. So, but that was definitely the way it was before. But even now, like I'll hold a session and then afterwards, it's almost like I usually leave 5 or 10 minutes afterwards to discuss things that people ask. It's kind of almost hard to do that discussion, like in the same way, if when I first get on with someone, I'm in my normal everyday consciousness, it's kind of where it's easy just to talk about, kind of shoot the breeze kind of talking. But when after a session, it's almost a little hard to like talk, because I can feel the energy still like expanding my consciousness. So that's just a very, short practical experience of that difference.
Yes, well, thanks for explaining what you experienced, because it does reveal why, after being in those energies, there are no words. And when our group comes back from the transmission, it takes people a while to even come back out of it. It's like we're waking from a sleep, but
Mm,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's like we're so out of our mind. Actually, we're not in the mind, and to hook back into that, is it takes a little bit of time. Yeah, yeah. So let's have you talk about the other embodiment frequencies.
Oh, yes. So there was six of them, and then the way they're broken up in the days will be physical etheric on day one, and that's probably the one that is very helpful for if people are experiencing so-called, maybe there was a term, I haven't heard it as much, but called ascension symptoms, and this is exactly like sort of physical, emotional, mental symptoms of having brought in such high frequency energies. I know that term was used maybe around 2012. That's when I was hearing it a lot more publicly. But so physical etheric, that will help those type of symptoms or effects of high frequency energies on our subtle bodies, particularly physical etheric. And then day two is more the astral causal, which is the astral being the emotional, mental effects and anchoring energies from either that dimension down all the way to the physical, or from higher into that body. And then finally, the third day is on the spiritual and divine embodiment frequencies. So that's why I was mentioning that it's kind of very holistic. The three transmissions will create some type of imprint, almost like an energetic device in our system, so that we're kind of almost attuned, even without re-listening to them, to be able to process. It's almost like digest high frequency energies, which then in one spiritual path will allow us to access even higher frequencies, because we have that digestion system in place.
And so get ready for intuition to increase, multidimensionality. When we talk about multidimensionality, that will feel that even more. Feel the presence of guides and beings who are working with us,
Mm-hmm.
and the information that's available. So it's a great time to start journaling as well, and sharing that information, or healers can even take this out into their world and put it in their practice. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really seems like it's a grounding. It's allowing us to ground the energies. We can say embodiment, but we're also grounding the energies here. Would you say?
Yeah, exactly. And I like the other metaphor. We started out with the jet fuel engine metaphor, but also on a more practical level, because it's a direct experience we have, is the sleep to wake cycle, or I would call it also the incarnational cycle. So like you said, like when we first wake up, if we've really traveled during our sleep time, it can be quite, it can take people like, 5, 10, half an hour before they're they know they're fully in their body. And maybe that's why we have the coffee industry, because that maybe is brings us even faster back. So we kind of just are so-called normal. So, and that's very similar. In fact, that could be the same process we're talking about, but in another context. And then the other context on a larger cosmic scale is how we incarnate. Like when you look at a child from when they're a baby to 7, they're basically, their soul or their consciousness is actually getting used to their physical body. So they usually say, like, from the first 3 years at least, a baby's consciousness is really kind of in a dream state. And then finally, maybe when they start, actually, Steiner would said this, is if you put shoes on them, particularly if they're lace type shoes, you accelerate this embodiment process. And usually when they go to school and start to do either math or reading, they're really have then embodied. So it's usually 7 and older. So, and sometimes that's not necessarily what you want to do. Like, you want that period of a lifespan, the first 7 years, where you're not completely like in that kind of linear embodied state, so that you can still remember a lot of your spiritual experiences between incarnations. So that's exactly also what we're talking about, but in another, maybe even like larger scale context.
I'm thinking of a certain 5-year-old that I know, and it's just so much joy to be around this little being, and the purity and the innocence that comes through. So would you say, as we do this, that we are becoming connected to those frequencies like this again, almost becoming childlike again with it? Purity.
Yeah. Huh? Yes, exactly. I think what, because it's also coming from the intergalactics, who are interdimensional themselves, it's a way to keep it balanced. So like I mentioned, like the coffee example is, yes, it gets you embodied, but it might be too fast. It can be helpful if that maybe someone has to, kind of get going. But if you do it on a slow process, you kind of keep the spiritual, like maybe you're trying to remember your dreams. So you keep the remembrance of the spiritual experience in the inner world, let's say like your dreams. But then you're also coming back into your body. So maybe you could share what you just experienced. Like sometimes you're at that point where you've had the experience, you're waking up, but you can't even talk about it with like your partner, your friend, or your family, because you're still in the interim where your brain is actually coming online. So I think what the intergalactic embodiment frequencies are doing is retaining the best of both worlds. Like, you're retaining the high frequency energies and those experiences, while you're also able to bring them into the physical plane where they might be needed, in order to like help people or serve people here in kind of the physical domain.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were sharing there, I felt the infinity symbol weaving these two areas together. Yeah. And so what I just want to share, what happens in these 3 days, it really is magical when we're together as a group, not only for the group energy, but doing this day after day and then going into the dream space. It builds the container, the vessel of energy, and it's palpable and it's so special, isn't it? It's great.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I do think linearly or I'm only able to plan or have only planned, let's say, this next one, but it looks like, because this is linked to the level 5, which will be downloaded, or the class will be in August, that there's probably going to be a series like this May, June, July, and then even the August Mastery Empowerment class, which will be kind of maybe a series. That's what I'm kind of intuiting. It could be changed, but I have a feeling that that's what the intergalactics are doing. They're kind of downloading a series here, and it makes sense, or it would make sense to kind of have this embodiment package first, because then if something higher comes down, then we have something in our system. It doesn't have to be in your individual system. It's sort of in the field. So whenever someone connects into the Mastery Empowerment class, it's already it's already been downloaded somewhere on the planet. But that system of being able to metabolize even higher frequencies is already in place.
We are ready to metabolize higher frequencies and put it in our world. There's a beautiful opportunity now on our world for all kinds of change. And this is doing it with this inner work that we're doing, this divine connected work that we're working on. So thank you. We have time for a little experience of the frequencies.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll experience actually the divine, the intergalactic embodied divine frequency, the one that I mentioned. And yeah, people can just relax and see how they feel. Yeah, so we're starting the intergalactic embodied divine frequency. Beginning the channeling now. You can just set the intention that the highest frequency light that you're currently holding, usually coming from our divine self or our connection with God, source, or love, is now manifesting easily in all the remaining 6 subtle body dimensions, which is the spiritual, causal, mental, emotional, etheric, and physical dimensions. Continuing with the divine embodiment frequency, now in a second deepening cycle. Finally, we're doing a third deepening cycle of the intergalactic divine embodiment frequency, taking the highest frequency light and bringing it down in a balanced, graceful fashion to whichever subtle body is necessary or needed. And that completes the exposure to the intergalactic divine embodiment frequency. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
What divine grace and beauty and presence that was. That was very, very cool. I know it's different for everyone, but in the first cycle, I heard the tone of those frequencies, very high pitched tone. And I sit on an exercise ball and it almost made me wobble off my ball. And the second cycle just really brought a deep, serene peace. And my heart just expanded. And then by the third cycle, I still feel like larger than this room.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Okay. Well, that's just a little taste. And imagine when we do this we're going to be together 6 hours over the 3 days. And that's just a beautiful experience to go deeper with all of these frequencies. How did you feel with that, Jean?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that in itself is a very high frequency light, and I think it's sort of like you can take something that's very high frequency and step it down one, and so I have a feeling when we do the physical one, you kind of will feel it even more in your body, so to speak, in your physical body, and kind of all the way to your bones. And probably will share this. I mentioned this model. It's actually from Rudolf Steiner of how the astral densifies into the physical. And what he delineated was basically, just as a really quick summary, four etheric layers that the energies or frequencies densify into. And they're based on the elements. So the first one is the warmth ether. Then there's the next one is called the light ether. And then the chemical ether. And then finally, they call it the life ether. And you find that before something goes and becomes physical. So a lot of that etheric or chi that's at that most dense life ether, it's actually stored in our bones. So there's this really interesting aspect of how a very dense aspect of the chi or etheric energies are in our stored in our bones. Our bones are like this reservoir, crystal reservoir.
Very, very interesting. Yes, I really felt this in the physical body. I know there were the subtle bodies that they were working on, but I did feel it even ground into my feet. So that's very, very interesting. All right. Well, what an experience that we're looking forward to with you and everyone. It's really a great, what do I want to call it? It's a tribe, actually, when we gather in this heart space and to hear everyone sharing. It's so fun to be together. So we invite all of those watching and listening to join us. The information for this course is right here on this webpage. And we hope you've enjoyed it and got a taste of these really miraculous frequencies. Jean, anything else you'd like to add?
Oh no, I think this is great, and I think like this is kind of the beginning of a summer series for people in the northern hemisphere. I know there are a lot of people from the southern hemisphere are now joining us, so maybe that's like a winter series. But I do feel like there's perhaps this intergalactic package that's coming down, so people might tune in. They may really feel kind of this connection, or and some people have already connected with the intergalactics. And I think we did mention we've done other master empowerments that we were going to include so people can really connect in and download more frequencies from intergalactics through that to kind of the free gift that will be part of sort of joining for this one. So I think there's both what's already been established from the intergalactics and sort of a whole new package that's coming in that's probably inaugurated with this series of embodiment frequencies.
Yes, very good. Okay. So the Arcturian intergalactic healing frequencies will be part of this package, and people can immediately download those and work with those. if they've done it already or they have never done it. It's a great place to start, as you mentioned. So we're really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Jean. And thank you, everyone. We hope to see you there.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
Namaste.